Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin, eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. I'm continuing my series on all of these brand new music I've gotten for myself early in this year. So this music plays a really important role moving forward through 2022. So let's go and get started with it. Okay. First up is Sault's 9. Sault had a really great run of albums in 2020 and ended up kind of being the voice of a lot of the racial unrest that was happening, especially in the U.S. during that time, during lockdown. And those albums are great and they're pristine in lots of ways, especially in terms of the message that they have. This album was released and it's supposed to only exist for 99 days. You know, you can only purchase it, you can only get a hold of it. It would only be streaming on platforms for 99 days. Now, I got the CD within those 99 days, so I can listen to it wherever I want to. All y'all streaming guys are going to be suffering. But for me, I held off on this one till the beginning of this year because, you know, Sault puts stuff out at such a fast rate. I want to make sure I take the time to ingest and enjoy it. And like the previous albums, Sault's approach here is sort of this multi-stylistic approach, cross-stylistic approach, pulling on lots of different black music styles, Afrobeat, jazz, funk, rock, that sort of thing. Overall, this album comes off as a little bit rawer than its predecessors, but still no less kind of carries a good solid message.
Today I'm lost. Tomorrow we will see. I used to dream about the things I want to be, but life beat me down. How can I smile?
Now, I will say, in comparison to Sault's Untitled Rise and Sault's Black Is, this album doesn't shine quite as brightly. Okay, it's still a pretty good release, an enjoyable release, and definitely has a very strong message like those previous albums did. But the high points aren't as high, and the overall quality isn't quite as sustained as it is in those previous albums. I do think it's interesting that the message on this album is still very black and Afrocentric, but also spoken from a more British London perspective. You know, there's a piece on here that's a spoken word piece that kind of makes fun of how Americans perceive Europeans and especially people from Britain and blacks. And so I think it's very interesting that this the previous albums were ended up being the voice of Black America, and now more the stance of also taking on the specific problems and issues that Black British people have to deal with. Interesting, changing it. Okay, next up is Shubh Saran's English. Shubh Saran is a Indian American guitarist with a very, very interesting background. He spent a lot of time in different countries, so he's got a very cross-cultural idea about, you know, life and existence and everything else. But his experiences have also informed a broad variety of musical backgrounds for him to have been exposed to growing up. And this album was a very, very intentional attempt to pull all of those different influences together into a single package. And you can definitely hear on this album that there's these, you know, splashes of like raga and Indian street music and all these kinds of different things that he pulls into English that makes it a really unique thing. But also it never loses its sort of rock credibility. It still feels almost like a prog jazz rock fusion world album. So it stands on its own as a really successful transcultural experience. And I really appreciate the effort that he's gone to kind of aggregate these various experiences into a singular style that is his own. And makes this album really stand out. And it also makes the album difficult to categorize. That's part of the beauty of English. It stands outside of a lot of those categorizations. Okay, next up is Men I Trust, the Untourable album. Men I Trust is kind of a dream pop group that I just recently discovered just this last year. And this album was called the Untourable album because it was created during 2020, during lockdown, with the idea that it wouldn't be toured. They made an album that was more about having a studio product than maybe previous albums that they've had. Now, this is the only album that I have by them, so I don't have a whole lot of perspective on their larger catalog. But I will tell you that the vibe of this album is incredible. It's got this really fantastic vinyl vibe, very warm feeling to it, and very subtle ways in which they make smooth and glassy sounds uncomfortable. They have these keyboard oscillations that feel very microtonal and make the whole thing feel very uneasy. They've got these bass sounds that are very warm and clicky, and they're juxtaposed against really breathy vocals. So the overall vibe of the album is very hazy and very much in that dream pop kind of style.
And please you allow, and I now believe that no one has got your secret path, playing too much your string. And I now believe that no one thought you had a lonely past, playing in strings so fast.
So this album was created with the kind of freedom granted by, not worrying too much about what an album is going to sound like on a live setting. And of course, things opened up and they've had to tour some of these songs in a live setting, and my understanding, they've gone off pretty well. So it's not like this is a complete studio fabrication. The product of this album and the vibe and the atmosphere of this album is very unique and very satisfying to listen to overall. Okay, finally, I've got Limina's Hidden Spaces. Limina's Hidden Spaces, I got into specifically as kind of like a nighttime ambient, relaxed, go to bed with the kids kind of album. It is film composer Tyler Durham's first foray in kind of to making freestanding music, and not attached to a movie. Now, it definitely has a sense of being like almost soundtracking its quality, but it's also like crosses the streams between like ambient electronica and contemporary classical music and new age, and sits at the kind of the corner of all of these three styles. And as such, it definitely is an album that can sit in the background and not, garner too much attention, but it's also very, very layered and very rich in its texture. If I was going to levy a criticism against Hidden Spaces, I would say that it's a little bit low on obvious melody. Not a deal breaker, okay, especially in this style of music. If you're talking about ambient style music is traditionally very low or very sparse on melody. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that keeps the various songs from being super identifiable one from the other. I couldn't hum you the tune from any of these songs, but I could identify it if you played it for me. The album is about the creative process, and I think that his foray into the creative process is part of what produced this album and made it so, overall, I think, so successful. Okay, that's all I have for you guys on this post too. So if you like this video, like and subscribe and share it out with your friends. Follow me over on Spotify. I'm going to be building a track list for 2022. If you want to know when more of these videos are going to happen, keep your eyes open. Until then, catch you guys on the flip side.